watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanova, and let's see the top stories. Donald Trump warns of further strikes on Iran's Karg Island, urges allies to act on Strait of Hormuz. Formula One confirms cancellation of Bahrain and Saudi races due to the conflict in the Middle East. And Kazakhstan holds constitutional referendum that could significantly reshape the country's political system. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned of further strikes on Iranian targets, while Tehran says it will intensify its response. The growing confrontation is also raising global concerns over energy supplies and security in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important oil routes.
The conflict between the United States and Iran is intensifying, with no clear sign of de-escalation. US President Donald Trump has threatened further strikes on Iran's main oil export hub, Karg Island, saying American forces may hit the site again. The warning comes as the war, launched jointly by the United States and Israel in late February, enters its third week. Iran has vowed to respond. The country's Revolutionary Guards say they have already carried out missile and drone attacks targeting Israeli territory and US bases in the region. The growing confrontation is now raising global concerns far beyond the battlefield. Much of the focus is on the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy routes. Around a fifth of global oil supplies pass through the narrow waterway, and Iran has warned it could shut it down if attacks continue. President Trump has called on allies, including Britain, France, South Korea, and Japan, to deploy warships to help secure the shipping route. So far, none have committed to sending forces. However, reports suggest British Prime Minister Keir Starmer may consider sending thousands of interceptor drones to the Middle East as part of regional defense efforts. Diplomatic efforts to end the fighting appear stalled. According to sources, the White House has rejected attempts by several Middle Eastern countries to open negotiations, while Tehran says it will not consider a ceasefire until US and Israeli strikes stop. More than 2,000 people have reportedly been killed since the fighting began, most of them in Iran, as the conflict risks turning into a wider regional crisis.
Iranian authorities say 20 people have been arrested on suspicion of cooperating with Israel. The arrest took place in Iran's northwestern West Azerbaijan province. Prosecutors say the suspects are accused of sending location details of Iranian military and security sites to Israel. The arrests come amid ongoing Israeli strikes on targets inside Iran. Lebanon's health ministry says 14 people, including 4 children, were killed in Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon on Sunday. The strikes targeted areas in Nebatia, Sidon, and the town of Jazin. 8 others were reported injured. According to the ministry, 7 of the victims died in Nebatia, including 4 children. Lebanese authorities say more than 800 people have been killed in Israeli attacks since early March, as the conflict continues across southern Lebanon. Tensions remain high along the Israel-Lebanon border as Hezbollah continues rocket and drone attacks on northern Israel, and Israeli forces strike Hezbollah targets. Our A News correspondent reports from the border city in northern Israel.
80 kilometers of border are served by Lebanon and Israel. The city is located along that edge, live in a especially dangerous situation. After the siren sound, they have only about 10 seconds to find shelter, usually inside their homes. No injuries are reported amid sporadic Hezbollah attacks on northern Israel today. Sirens warning of rocket fire and suspected drone infiltrations have sounded in the Galilee multiple times this morning since March 2nd, when Hezbollah Hezbollah began attacking Israel in response to the killing of Iran's late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The group has launched around 100 rockets a day on average, according to the IDF. Also, according to several sources, Israel plans to take control of the entire area south of the Litani River in southern Lebanon through a large-scale ground invasion unprecedented since 2006. After Friday's strikes, IDF says over 110 Hezbollah command centers hit since escalation.
Formula One says the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix scheduled for April will not take place due to security concerns linked to the ongoing Iran war. The races had been planned for April 12th in Bahrain and April 19th in the Saudi city of Jeddah. Formula One said the decision follows the deteriorating security situation in the Middle East after Iran launched retaliatory attacks in response to U.S. and Israeli strikes. The FIA said the safety of teams, staff and fans remains the top priority. Formula One has not ruled out rescheduling the races later in the season, but no replacement events are planned for April. Meanwhile, the war is already affecting global energy markets. Oil prices have surged and shipping activity in the Gulf has slowed amid security fears. Here is more.
In Thailand's Samut Sakhon province, drivers and truck owners face fuel shortages. Some petrol stations temporarily ran out of diesel. A government price freeze on diesel ends Monday.
It is worrying because diesel has run out at several stations. I drive a delivery truck every day, so it is concerning for me.
In Pakistan, US-Israel tensions over Iran and rising oil prices are hurting food delivery riders. Some skip meals during Ramadan and rely on charity as record fuel costs have cut their earnings. The Sri Lankan government announced that fuel would be rationed with immediate effect on Sunday to conserve the country's fuel stock as prices increased and supply remained disrupted by the conflict in the Middle East. India and Turkey are also struggling. Higher fuel and gas prices, inflation and falling currency values are reducing people's buying power. In Europe, Middle East tensions are causing energy market swings. Unstable US LNG imports make Europe's energy security more uncertain.
This is putting a very tough pressure on the European gas markets. Also, we see rising cost of the gasoline at the pump, so higher energy costs, which will again have huge impact on the European citizens and which risk to ignite an inflation spiral where all prices rise as a consequence of the rising energy prices.
This trend shows that global military and economic tensions are becoming serious challenges for both daily life and the economy and are having a significant impact on the future outlook of global energy markets.
And now to Cuba. Havana has confirmed it's holding talks with the United States as the island faces a deepening energy and economic crisis.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel said Cuban officials recently held discussions with representatives of the US government to address key differences and explore possible solutions through dialogue. He said the talks remain in their early stages and are aimed at determining whether both sides are willing to take concrete steps that could benefit the people of both countries. Díaz-Canel added that Havana is prepared to continue discussions with the United States on the basis of equality, respect for sovereignty, and mutual cooperation. The United Nations has welcomed the dialogue. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said the organization supports negotiations as a way to peacefully resolve disputes and express concern over fuel shortages affecting healthcare, food supplies, and water access in Cuba. US President Donald Trump has also acknowledged the contacts in recent weeks.
Cuba is right now a failed nation. They don't even have jet fuel to get for airplanes to take off. They're clogging up their runway. We're talking to Cuba right now. I have Marco Rubio talking to Cuba right now, and they should absolutely make a deal because it's really a humanitarian threat.
Trump described Cuba as facing severe economic and energy pressure after losing financial and oil support previously provided by Venezuela, suggesting that an agreement with Havana could be possible as the crisis deepens. Energy has become central to the situation. Cuban officials say no fuel shipments have reached the island in the past 3 months, after the United States moved to cut off Venezuelan oil supplies and warned other countries against sending fuel to Cuba.
Before last week, we still had certain available supplies of fuel oil and diesel that we were using at 2 key sites for the National Electric Power System, the distributed generation engines we have in Moa and an engine system we have in Mariel. 3 months without any incoming fuel, diesel runs out and fuel oil runs out. Therefore, a considerable number of megawatts that we were generating, especially for peak hours and nighttime hours, drop out of that generation system and put the system in a situation of great instability.
The shortages have disrupted electricity generation, transportation and other basic services, with officials warning of wider effects on healthcare, food distribution and water access. The discussions also carry wider historical significance. Relations between Havana and Washington have remained strained for nearly 7 decades, dating back to the 1959 Cuban Revolution and the US embargo that followed.
The United States and Japan have signed new energy agreements in Tokyo. The move comes as countries seek stable supplies during a growing global energy crisis.
US and Japanese officials signed new energy cooperation agreements on Saturday in Tokyo during the Indo-Pacific Energy Security Ministerial and Business Forum. Speaking at the forum, US Interior Secretary Doug Burgum said countries must ensure reliable energy supply from trusted partners.
In the same way, whether it's a geographic strait in the Middle East or whether it's a control of supply, for us to achieve the full potential on this planet, we've got to have reliable, affordable, and secure, meaning from partners you trust that can deliver and not hold you literally hostage economically around any of these elements. So,
Japan's Economy, Trade and Industry Minister Ryosei Akazawa said stronger cooperation with Washington will help meet rising demand for energy in the region.
Energy demand will increase substantially, along with our economic growth, digitalization, AI transformation, and spreading air conditioners. Building abundant, affordable, clean, and resilient energy supply system is crucial to meet the robust demand. Working closely with the United States, Japan will bring solutions and contribute to strengthening energy security throughout the region.
Japan relies on the Middle East for around 90% of its oil imports. Tokyo says it will release about 80 million barrels from its national and private reserves starting March 16th. The push comes as oil prices have surged following the outbreak of a US-Israeli war with Iran on February 28th. Earlier this week, the International Energy Agency agreed to release a record 400 million barrels of oil from strategic reserves to help stabilize global markets.
Senior economic officials from the United States and China will meet in Paris on Sunday for a new round of trade talks in Paris. The aim is to resolve outstanding issues in the trade agreement and pave the way for US President Donald Trump's visit to Beijing at the end of March, where he is expected to meet Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The talks will be led by US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lipeng. They will discuss US tariffs, Chinese rare earth exports, high-tech restrictions, and Chinese purchases of US farm goods. French voters headed to the polls on Sunday to elect mayors across the country in nationwide municipal elections. Polling stations opened at 8 a.m. local time and will close in the evening, with a second round scheduled for March 22nd in many cities. The vote covers nearly 35,000 municipalities across France. The elections are also seen as an early test for political support ahead of next year's presidential race, including for the far-right National Rally Party. Now we'll take a major look at stories from the region. Evacuations continue at the Azerbaijan-Iran border as foreign nationals leave Iran amid the ongoing conflict. Authorities say more than 2,000 people from dozens of countries have already crossed through the Astara checkpoint. Our Rugaya Bashamak has more.
Another day and the coordination evacuation is still in effect, keeping the process moving smoothly and efficiently for those arriving. So far, more than 2,300 people have been evacuated from this checkpoint from more than 70 countries coming from Iran, some of whom are ambassadors, diplomats, and students who were residing in the country of Iran at the time the war began. On Saturday alone, at least 60 people were evacuated. They mostly included students of India, citizens of Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, Russia, and Canada, as well as a diplomat of the Pakistani embassy in Iran. For the time being, authorities remain prepared to receive incoming arrivals, ensuring that all the transit procedures are on the highest capacity. This is Rukaya Bashamak here at Astara for A News.
Kazakhstan is holding a nationwide referendum on a new draft constitution that could significantly reshape the country's political system. Polling stations have opened across the country with millions of voters eligible to take part. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzana is following the vote from Almaty.
I'm at one of the polling stations here in Almaty, where voters are taking part in a nationwide referendum on a new draft constitution. People here are being asked a single question: do they approve the country's new basic law? The text of the proposed constitution was published in the media on February 12th. Across Kazakhstan, about 12.5 million people are eligible to vote. In total, more than 10,000 polling stations are operating across the country. Authorities say about $42 million was allocated to organize the referendum. The proposed constitution would bring significant changes to the country's political system. One of the key proposals is to replace the current two-chamber parliament with a single-chamber body called the Kurultai. It would have 145 members elected for 5-year terms through party lists. The draft also expands presidential powers. Under the proposal, the president would be able to appoint the prosecutor general, the heads of the constitutional and supreme courts, the governor of the National Bank, and the chief of the National Security Committee without parliamentary approval, which is currently required. The document also introduces the position of vice president. This person would be appointed by the president with the consent of the Kurultai and would serve as acting head of state if the president leaves office early or dies. The draft also revises the section on human rights and freedoms. Marriage is defined as a voluntary union between a man and woman registered by the state. Human rights advocates say this wording excludes alternative unions. In total, the reform is significant. According to its supporters, about 84% of the current constitution would be revised, affecting most areas of the country's political and legal system. This is the 5th nationwide referendum in the history of independent Kazakhstan. Previous votes we held in different years and covered issues ranging from extending presidential powers to constitutional amendments and the construction of a nuclear power plant. And if the constitution is approved, it could come into force on July 1st and the current parliament would be dissolved. Fariza Kalimurzana, Almaty, A News.
Global turbulence is at the center of discussions at the 13th Global Baku Forum, where leaders and experts are debating the future of international stability and cooperation. Aytan Shukurova has more.
Another series of discussions in the framework of 13th Global Baku Forum focused on the theme of global turbulence and its implications for international cooperation and security. The program opened with a session examining the drivers of global turbulence, where speakers discussed the growing complexity of global political, economic and technological transitions. Participants highlighted how rapid technological development, climate disruption and geopolitical shifts are creating new pressure on existing global governance systems. The second discussion addressed the rise of armed conflict and security instability, with participants analyzing how ongoing wars, especially in the Middle East, are reshaping regional dynamics and testing international deterrence frameworks. Attention then turned to the relationship between technology and sovereignty, as speakers explored how technological capability is increasingly becoming a key source of geopolitical power. The session examined the strategic implications of technological competition and the challenges countries face in preserving sovereignty in rapidly evolving digital landscape. Later in the day, the forum focused on climate change and global water systems, including the security implications of sea level changes and shifting water resources. The discussion, held in partnership with the COP29 presidency, highlighted the growing link between climate change, economic stability and regional security. Another session examined the concept of human security, looking beyond traditional military threats to address issues such as inequality, food security, social cohesion, and the resilience of institutions. I'm Aytan Shukurova with Zeynal Abdin Hasanov and Evas Hajiev, A News.
World Urban Forum 2026 is drawing global attention to Baku as preparations intensify for one of the world's largest gatherings on sustainable urban development. At a media briefing, organizers outlined plans for the forum, which will bring thousands of policymakers, urban planners and international experts together in Azerbaijan this May to address the growing global housing crisis and the future of resilient cities. Our Anzula Pervizgizı has more.
Today, a media briefing was held ahead of the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, WUF 13, which will take place in Baku, Azerbaijan from May 17th to 22nd, 2026. Speakers highlighted the crucial role of cities in shaping the future, with housing at the heart of the discussion. The theme of WUF 13's, Housing the World's Safe and Resilient Cities and Communities, reflects the growing global housing crisis, where more than 1 billion people live in informal settlements and around 300 million are homeless. Participants also had a first-hand look at the Baku Olympic Stadium, the forum's main venue, and saw the final stages of preparation. The stadium will host around 40 main sessions, more than 350 parallel events. Speakers also emphasized the importance of linking WUF 13 with regional and national urban forums, inclusive upcoming events in Bratislava, Serbia, Uzbekistan, as well as international platforms such as Sustainable Development Forum in Geneva and the ESCAP Committee for Housing and Urban Development. Preparations for the forum are progressing actively through close cooperation between the government of Azerbaijan, UN Habitat, and numerous national and international partners. The forum aims to demonstrate how cities can become more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable through cooperation, innovation, and shared knowledge. UN representatives praised the government of Azerbaijan for its strong support, not only in hosting a world-class event, but also in linking WUF 13 to long-term public policy, global development goals, and environmental and urban priorities. Speakers also highlighted Azerbaijan's hospitality, rich culture and history, and the country's leadership in demonstrating how cities can address global urban challenges. With nearly 15,000 participants from 169 countries registered so far, WUF 13 is expected to become a global platform where leaders, experts and the UN community come together to shape the future of cities and communities, with Azerbaijan at the center of the global urban dialogue.
This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for joining us and stay with us.